Hey everybody, Mr. Mendenhall here today. I am here to kind of continue practicing making these videos for you guys, just to help you guys with your e-learning and your learning throughout the rest, however long this lasts. But also you guys are on here to kind of continue practicing using Edsby to turn in your work, watching these videos to help with your learning, and turning your work into me so I can grade it. Now, one of the cool ways I think we can do that, like continue to practice using Edsby, is to do something that I kind of promised you guys we would try to do, which is finish reading Coraline. Now, I kind of made this video only for my homeroom, my morning class, Team Horde, you guys, simply because my afternoon class hasn't really had the opportunity to kind of read as far as you guys have. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to finish reading Coraline to you guys. We got about 20 or so pages left. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read straight through. I'm going to pick up where we left off and just read it until the very end. What you guys can do is you can turn this video on, kind of sit back, relax, watch as I finish reading this to you. What's cool about this is you guys can do this at your own pace. You guys can watch this at your leisure, meaning if you need a break like 10, 15 minutes in, go ahead and hit that pause button, take your break, and then whenever you guys are done, come back and finish the video. So once again, I am going to be finishing Coraline with you guys. I will post it up here so you guys can see what I'm reading, see the pages I'm reading. Once again, you guys can do this however you want to. You can pause the video, watch it in 5-minute increments, do whatever you need to do. But we're going to finish it. After you're done watching this video, once you're done watching this video, I have posted a couple questions off to the side on Edsby that I want you guys to try your best to answer. It's going to work very much like the survey. You download it, edit it however you want to, put your answers in, and then turn it back into me. Once again, this is not for a grade. This is not for a grade yet. We just want to kind of practice and get you guys feeling comfortable, answering questions, turning in your work, and then getting feedback from me. So just do the best you can. I'm here to answer any questions if you got any, okay? So why don't we waste very little time? Let's go ahead and finish Coraline, shall we? So let me pull it up real quick. There we go. Ooh, what's cool about this whole screen share thing is that I can move, you can still see me, but you can also see what I'm working on too. So let me show you guys real quick. Right now I'm doing this live, so you guys can see Coraline, the book right here, and you can still see me. Isn't that great? So let's jump to where we left off. When we last left our hero, Coraline, she had just escaped this other world. She had escaped the other mother. She slammed the door and then she fell asleep. And so now she's wondering, is she back where she was or is she somewhere else? We're going to have to read and find out. All right, so here we go. Her mother shook her gently awake. Coraline, she said, darling, what a funny place to fall asleep. And really, this room is only for best. We looked all over the house for you. Coraline stretched and blinked. I'm sorry, she said. I fell asleep. Oh, I can see that, said her mother. And wherever did the cat come from? He was waiting by the front door when I came in, shot out like a bullet as I opened it. Probably had things to do, said Coraline. Then she hugged her mother so tightly that her arms began to ache. Her mother hugged Coraline back. Dinner in 15 minutes, said her mother. Don't forget to wash your hands, and just look at those pajama bottoms. What did you do to your poor knee? I tripped, said Coraline. She went into the bathroom and she washed her hands and cleaned her bloody knee. She put ointment on her cuts and scrapes. She went into her bedroom, her real bedroom, her true bedroom. She pushed her hands into the pockets of her dressing gown, and she pulled out 3 marbles, a stone with a hole in it, the black key, and an empty snow globe. She shook the snow globe and watched the glittery snow swirl through the water to fill the empty world. She put it down and watched the snow fall, covering the place where the little couple had once stood. Coraline took a piece of string from her toy box and she strung the black key on the string. Then she knotted the string and hung it around her neck. There, she said. She put on some clothes and hid the key under her t-shirt. It was cold against her skin. The stone went into her pocket. Coraline walked down the hallway to her father's study. He had his back to her, but she knew, just on seeing him, that his eyes, when he turned around, would be her father's kind gray eyes. And she crept over and kissed him on the back of his balding head. "Hello, Coraline," he said. Then he looked around and smiled at her. "What was that for?" "Oh, nothing," said Coraline. "I just miss you sometimes, that's all." "Oh, good," he said. He put the computer to sleep, stood up, and then, for no reason at all, he picked Coraline up, which he had not done for such a long, long time. Not since he had started pointing out to her she was much too old to be carried, and he carried her into the kitchen. Dinner that night was pizza, and even though it was homemade by her father, so the crust was alternately thick and doughy and raw, or too thin to be burnt, and even though he had put slices of green pepper on it, along with little meatballs and, of all things, pineapple chunks. That's gross. I hate pineapple on pizza. Coraline ate the entire slice she had been given. Well, she ate everything except for the pineapple chunks. Same, me too. And soon enough, it was bedtime. Coraline kept the key around her neck, but she put the gray marbles beneath her pillow, and in bed that night, Coraline dreamed a dream. She was at a picnic under an old oak tree in a green meadow. The sun was high in the sky, and while there were distant, fluffy white clouds on the horizon, the sky above her head was deep, untroubled blue. There was a white linen cloth laid in the grass with bowls piled high with food. She could see salads and sandwiches, nuts and fruit, jugs of lemonade and water and thick chocolate milk. Coraline sat on one side of the tablecloth while 3 other children took a side each. They were dressed in the oddest clothes. The smallest of them, sitting on Coraline's left, was a boy with red velvet knee breeches and a frilly white shirt. His face was dirty, and he was piling his plate high with boiled new potatoes and with what looked like cold, whole cooked trout. "This is the finest of picnics, lady," he said to her. "Yes," said Coraline. "I think it is. I wonder who organized it." "Why, I rather think you did, miss," said a tall girl sitting opposite Coraline. She wore a brown, rather shapeless dress and had a brown bonnet on her head, which tied beneath her chin. "And we are more grateful for it and for all than ever words can say." She was eating slices of bread and jam, deftly cutting the bread from a large golden brown loaf with a huge knife, then spooning on the purple jam with a wooden spoon. She had jam all around her mouth. "Aye, this is the finest food I have eaten in centuries," said the girl on Coraline's right. She was a very pale child dressed in what seemed to be spider webs, with a circle of glittering silver in her blonde hair. Coraline could have sworn that the girl had 2 wings, like dusty silver butterfly wings, not bird wings, coming out of her back. The girl's plate was piled high with pretty flowers. She smiled at Coraline as if it had been a very long time since she had smiled, and she had almost, but not quite, forgotten how Coraline found herself liking this girl immensely. Now, guys, I understand like the words look a little blurry on your end. Just do the best you can. I've tried to kind of play around with it. I know it looks kind of blurry, but we're just going to do the best we can, right? So hope you guys keep listening. And then, in the way of dreams, the picnic was done, and they were playing in the meadow, running and shouting, and tossing a glittering ball from one to another. Coraline knew it was a dream then, because none of them ever got tired or winded or out of breath. She wasn't even sweating. They just laughed and ran in a game that was partly tag, partly piggy in the middle, and partly just a magnificent romp. I guess that means they're just having a grand old time, but it's a dream, so. 3 of them ran along the ground while the pale girl fluttered a little over their heads, swooping down on the butterfly wings to grab the ball and swing up again into the sky before she tossed the ball to one of the other children. And then, without a word about being spoken, the game was done. And the 4 of them went back to the picnic cloth, where the lunch dishes had been cleared away. And there were 4 bowls waiting for them. 3 of ice cream, 1 of honeysuckle flowers piled high. They ate with relish. "Thank you for coming to my party," said Coraline. "I mean, if it is mine." "Oh, the pleasure is ours, Coraline Jones," said the winged girl, nibbling another honeysuckle blossom. "If there were but something we could do for you, to thank you, to reward you." "Aye," said the boy with the red velvet breeches and the dirty face. He put out his hand and held Coraline's hand with his own. It was warm now. "It's a very fine thing you did for us, miss," said the tall girl. She now had a smear of chocolate ice cream all around her lips. "I'm just pleased it's all over," said Coraline. "So I guess these kids are the ones that she rescued from the other mother. They're showing up in a dream. How weird. Was it her imagination? Or did a shadow cross the faces of the other children at the picnic? The winged girl, the circlet in her hair glittering like a star, rested her fingers for a moment on the back of Coraline's hand. "It is over. And I'm done with for us," she said. "This is our staging point. This is our staging post. From here, we 3 will set out for uncharted lands. And what comes after, no one alive can say." She stopped talking. "There's a but, isn't there?" said Coraline. "I can feel it, like a rain cloud." The boy on her left tried to smile bravely, but his lower lip began to tremble, and he bit it with his upper teeth and said nothing. The girl in the brown bonnet shifted uncomfortably and said, "Yes, miss." "But I got you 3 back," said Coraline. "I got Mom and Dad back. I shut the door. I locked it. What more was I meant to do?" The boy squeezed Coraline's hand with his. She found herself remembering when it had been she trying to reassure him when he was little more than a cold memory in the darkness. "Oh, can't you give me a clue?" asked Coraline. "Isn't there something you can tell me?" "The Bedlam swore by her good right hand," said the tall girl. "But she lied." "My governess," said the boy, "used to say that nobody's ever given more to shoulder than he or she can bear." He shrugged as he said this, as if he had not yet made up his own mind whether or not it was true. "We wish you luck," said the winged girl, "for good fortune and wisdom and courage. Although you have already shown that you have all 3 of these blessings and in abundance." "She hates you," blurted out the boy. "She hasn't lost anything for so long. Be wise, be brave, and be tricky." "But it's not fair," said Coraline in her dream angrily. "It's just not fair. It should be over." The boy with the dirty face stood up and hugged Coraline tightly. "Take comfort in this," he whispered. "Thou'rt alive. Thou livest." And in her dream, Coraline saw the sun had set and the stars were twinkling in the darkening sky. Coraline stood in the meadow, and she watched as the 3 children, 2 of them walking, 1 of them flying, went away from her across the grass, silver in the light of the huge moon. the three of them came to a small wooden bridge over a stream. They stopped there and turned and waved, and Coraline waved back. And what came after was darkness. So I guess what happened was, in her dream, Coraline was having this big like picnic with the kids that she saved from the other mother. But they were like ghosts. If you remember, they were like spirits, things like that. And then in her dream, after they had this grand picnic, the ghosts had to move on. Like they couldn't go with her. They couldn't stay with her. And so what I'm guessing is that Coraline is now really upset that these kids that she saved are still, like, they're still dead. So they have to move on. Their ghosts and spirit have to move on. So I guess she's really upset by that. Coraline woke in the early hours of the morning, convinced she had heard something moving, but unsure what it was. She waited. Something made a rustling noise outside her bedroom door. She wondered if it was a rat. The door rattled. Coraline clambered out of bed. "Go away," said Coraline sharply. "Go away or you'll be sorry." There was a pause. Then the whatever it was scuttled away down the hall. There was something odd and irregular about its footsteps. If they were footsteps. Coraline found herself wondering if it was perhaps a rat with an extra leg. "It isn't over, is it?" she said to herself. Then she opened the bedroom door. The gray pre-dawn light showed her in the whole of the corridor completely deserted. She went towards the front door, sparing a hasty glance back at the wardrobe door mirror hanging on the wall at the other end of the hallway, seeing nothing but her own pale face staring back at her, looking sleepily and serious. Gentle, reassuring snores came from her parents' room, but the door was closed. All the doors of the corridor were closed. Whatever the scuttling thing was, it had to be here somewhere. Coraline opened the front door and looked at the gray sky. She wondered how long it would be until the sun came up, wondered whether her dream had been a true thing, while knowing in her heart that it had been. Something she had taken to be part of the shadows under the hall couch detached itself from beneath the couch and made a mad, scrabbling rush on its long, white legs, heading for the front door. Coraline's mouth dropped open in horror, and she stepped out of the way as the thing clicked and scuttled past her and out of the house, running crab-like on its too many tapping, clicking, scurrying feet. Like how the author describes this thing like some kind of crab. Like usually most authors will describe it like a spider. He describes it like a crab, which paints a good picture in my head. I don't know about you guys. She knew what it was, and she knew what it was after. She had seen it too many times in the last few days, reaching and clutching and snatching and popping black beetles obediently into the other mother's mouth. 5-footed, crimson-nailed, the color of bone. It was the other mother's right hand. It wanted the black key. Look at that illustration there. So that's the thing that's been scuttling around her apartment. It's the other mother's right hand. I guess it popped off when Coraline shut the door. Oh boy, last chapter, guys. Let's do it. I think it's the last chapter. Let's find out. Coraline's parents never seemed to remember anything about their time in the snow globe. At least, they never said anything about it, and Coraline never mentioned it to them. Sometimes she wondered whether they had ever noticed that they had lost 2 days in the real world, and came to the eventual conclusion that they had not. Then again, there are some people who keep track of every day and every hour, and there are people who don't, and Coraline's parents were solidly in the second camp. Coraline had placed the marbles beneath her pillow before she went to sleep that first night home in her own room once more. She went back to her bed after she saw the other mother's hand, although there was not much time left for sleeping, and she rested her head back on that pillow. I mean, think about that. If you knew this thing was in your house, would you guys be able to sleep? I don't think so. Something scrunched gently as she did. She sat up and lifted the pillow. The fragments of the glass marbles that she saw looked like the remains of eggshells one finds beneath trees in the springtime, like empty, broken robin's eggs, or even more delicate, wren's eggs, perhaps. Whatever had been inside the glass spheres had gone. Coraline thought of the three children waving goodbye to her in the moonlight, waving before they crossed that silver stream. She gathered up the eggshell-thin fragments with care and placed them in small blue boxes, which had once held a bracelet that her grandmother had given her when she was a little girl. The bracelet was long lost, but the box remained. Miss Spink and Miss Forcible came back from visiting Miss Spink's niece, and Coraline went down to their flat for tea. It was a Monday. On Wednesday, Coraline would go back to school. A whole new school year would begin. Miss Forcible insisted on reading Coraline's tea leaves. Well, looks like everything's mostly shipshape and Bristol fashion, said Miss Forcible. Sorry? Yeah, I don't know what that means either. Everything is coming up roses, said Miss Forcible. Well, almost everything. I'm not sure what that is. She pointed to a clump of tea leaves sticking to the side of the cup. Miss Spink tutted and reached for the cup. Honestly, Miriam, give it over here. Let me see. She blinked through her thick spectacles or glasses. Oh dear, no, I have no idea what that signifies. It looks almost like a hand. Coraline looked. The clump of leaves did look a little like a hand reaching for something. Hamish, the Scotty dog, was hiding under Miss Forcible's chair, and he wouldn't come out. I think he was in some sort of fright, said Miss Spink. He has a deep gash in his side, poor dear. We'll take him to the vet later this afternoon. I wish I knew what could have done it. Something, Coraline knew, would have to be done. That final week of the holidays, the weather was magnificent, as if it was the summer itself were trying to make up for the miserable weather they had been having by giving them some bright and glorious days before it ended. The crazy old man upstairs called down to Coraline when he saw her coming out of Miss Spink and Miss Forcible's flat. Hey, hi, you, Coraline, he shouted over the railing. It's Coraline, she said. Oh, excuse me, I said that wrong. He calls her Caroline, right? He doesn't know her name. It's Coraline, she said. How are the mice? Something has frightened them, said the old man, scratching his mustache. I think maybe there's a weasel in the house. Something is about. I heard it in the night. In my country, we'd have put down a trap for it. Maybe put down a little meat or hamburger. And when the creature comes to feast, then bam! It would be caught and never bother us more. The mice are so scared that they will not even pick up their little musical instruments. I don't think it wants meat, said Coraline. She put her hand up and touched the black key that hung about her neck. Then she went inside. She bathed herself and kept the key around her neck. The whole time she was in the bath, she never took it off anymore. Something scratched at her bedroom window after she went to bed. Coraline was almost asleep, but she slipped out of her bed and pulled open the curtains. A white hand with crimson fingernails leapt from the window ledge onto the drain pipe and was immediately out of sight. There were deep gouges in the glass on the other side of the window. Coraline slept uneasily that night, waking from time to time to plot and plan and ponder, then falling back into sleep, never quite certain where her pondering ended and the dream began. One ear always open for the sound of something scratching at her window pane or at her bedroom door. In the morning, Coraline said to her mother, I'm going to have a picnic with my dolls today. Can I borrow a sheet? An old one? One you don't need any longer? As a tablecloth? I don't think we have one of those, said her mother. She opened the kitchen drawer that held the napkins and the tablecloths, and she prodded about in it. Hold on. Will this do? It was a folded-up disposable paper tablecloth covered with red flowers left over from some picnic they had been on several years before. "Oh, that's perfect," said Coraline. "I didn't think you played with your dolls anymore," said Mrs. Jones. "I don't. They're protective. They're protective coloration." "Well, be back in time for lunch," said her mother. "Have a good time." It seems like her mother's actually like paying more attention to her now. I'm wondering what changed. Coraline filled a cardboard box with dolls and several plastic doll teacups. She filled a jug with water. Then she went outside. She walked down the road just as if she were going to the shops. Before she reached the supermarket, she cut across a fence into some wasteland and along an old drive, then crawled under a hedge. She had to go under the hedge in 2 journeys in order to not spill the water from the jug. It was a long, roundabout, looping journey, but at the end of it, Coraline was satisfied that she had not been followed. She came out behind the dilapidated old tennis court. She crossed over it to the meadow where the long grass swayed. She found the planks on the edge of the meadow. They were astonishingly heavy, almost too heavy for a girl to lift, even using all of her strength. But she managed. She didn't have any chance. She pulled the planks out of the way one by one, grunting and sweating with the effort, revealing a deep, round, brick-lined hole in the ground. It smelled of damp and the dark. The bricks were greenish and slippery. She spread out the tablecloth and laid it carefully over the top of the well. She put a plastic doll's cup every foot or so at the edge of the well, and she weighed each cup down with water from the jug. She put a doll in the grass beside each cup, making it look as much like a girl's tea party as she could. So I'm wondering why the author said that. Because I'm thinking she's actually having an actual tea party, but the way the author is describing it, it's almost like she's setting some sort of set, like she's a trap or something. I don't know. Then she retraced her steps back under the hedge along the dusty yellow drive, around the back of the shops, back to her house. She reached up and took the key from around her neck. She dangled it from the string as if the key were just something she liked to play with. Then she knocked on the door of Miss Spink and Miss Forcible's flat. Miss Spink opened the door. "Hello, dear," she said. I don't want to come in," said Coraline. "I just wanted to find out how Hamish was doing." Miss Spink sighed. "The vet says that Hamish is a brave little soldier. Luckily, the cut doesn't seem to be infected. We cannot imagine what could have done it. The vet says some animal, he thinks, but has no idea what. Mr. Bobo says he thinks it might have been a weasel or something." "Mr. Bobo?" "Oh, yes, the man in the top flat. Mr. Bobo. Fine old circus family, I believe. Romanian or Slovenian or Livonian or one of those countries. Bless me, I can never remember them anymore." So I guess they're saying Mr. Bobo was not from here. He's foreign. It had never occurred to Coraline that the crazy old man upstairs actually had a name. She realized if she had known his name was Mr. Bobo, she would have said it every chance she got. How often do you get to say a name like Mr. Bobo? Not often, really. "Oh," said Coraline to Miss Spink, "Mr. Bobo. Right. Well," she said a little louder, "I'm going to go and play with my dolls now, over by the old tennis court, round the back." She's saying it louder. It's almost, I think what she's trying to do is trying to get the little, hand thing to follow her. I don't know what she's going to do with it, though. "Oh, yes, that's nice, dear," said Mrs. Spink. Then she added confidently, "Make sure you keep an eye out for the old well. Mr. Lovett, who was here before your time, said that he thought it might go down for a half a mile or more." Coraline hoped that the hand had not heard this last, and she changed the subject. "This key," said Coraline loudly. "Oh, it's just some old key from our house. It's part of my game. That's why I'm carrying it around with me on this piece of string. Well, goodbye now." I think she has a plan here, guys. I think Coraline has this plan to kind of trap this hand. "What an extraordinary child," said Miss Spink to herself as she closed the door. Coraline ambled across the meadow towards the old tennis court, dangling and swinging the black key on its piece of string as she walked. Several times she thought she saw something the color of bone in the undergrowth. It was keeping pace with her, about 35 feet away. She tried to whistle, but nothing happened. So she sang out loud instead, a song her father had made up for her when she was a little baby and which had always made her laugh. It went like this. I am not singing for you guys. I am sorry. I will just read it for you. Y'all can sing it on your own, okay? Just saying. Oh, my twitchy witchy girl, I think you are so nice. I give you bowls of porridge and I give you bowls of ice. Cream. I give you lots of kisses and I give you lots of hugs, but I never give you sandwiches with bugs in. That is what she's saying as she sauntered through the woods, and her voice hardly trembled at all. The doll's tea party was where she had left it. She was relieved that it was not a windy day, for everything was still in its place. Every water-filled plastic cup weighed down the paper tablecloth as it was meant to. She breathed a sigh of relief. Now came the hardest part. Hello, dolls, she said brightly. It's tea time. She walked close to the paper tablecloth. I brought the lucky key, she told the dolls, to make sure we have good picnics. Now, do you guys think she's actually talking to the dolls, or do you think she's kind of like making some sort of scene so something will follow her? I'm wondering. And then, as carefully as she could, she leaned over and gently placed the key on the tablecloth. She was still holding onto the string. She held her breath, hoping that the cups of water at the edges of the well would outweigh the cloth down, letting it take the weight of the key without collapsing into the well. The key sat in the middle of the paper picnic cloth. Coraline let go of the string and took a step back. Now it was all up to the hand. I knew it. I knew it. So she's setting a trap for this hand. I guess she wants to capture it and put it in this well. She turned to her dolls. Who would like a piece of cherry cake? She asked. Gemina, Pinky, Primrose, and she served each doll a slice of invisible cake on an invisible plate, chattering happily as she did so. From the corner of her eye, she saw something bone white. Oh, here we go. Scamper from one tree trunk to another, closer and closer. She forced herself not to look at it. Gemina, she said, Coraline, what a bad girl you are. You've dropped your cake. Now I'll have to go over and get you a whole new slice. And she walked around the tea party until she was on the other side of it to the hand. She pretended to clean up spilled cake and to get Gemina another piece. And then, in a skittering, shittering rush, it came. The hand, running high on its fingertips, scrabbled through the tall grass and up onto the tree stump. It stood there for a moment, like a crab tasting the air, and then it made one triumphant, nail-clacking leap onto the center of the paper tablecloth. Time slowed for Coraline. The white fingers closed around the black key. And then the weight and the momentum of the hand sent the plastic doll's cups flying, and the paper tablecloth of the key and the other mother's right hand went tumbling down into the darkness of the well. Coraline counted slowly under her breath. She got up to 40 before she heard a muffled splash coming from a long way down. I think she trapped the hand, everybody. I think she got it. Someone had once told her that if you look up at the sky from the bottom of a mine shaft, even the brightest daylight, you see a night sky and stars. Coraline wondered if the hand could see stars from where she was. She hauled the heavy planks back onto the well, covering it carefully as she could. She didn't want anything to fall in. She didn't want anything to ever get out. Then she put her dolls and the cups back in the cardboard box she had carried them out in. Something caught her eye while she was doing this, and she straightened up in time to see the black cat stalking toward her, its tail held high and curling at the tip like a question mark. It was the first time she had seen the cat in several days, since they had returned together from the other mother's place. The cat walked over to her and jumped up onto the planks that covered the well. Then, slowly, it winked an eye at her. It sprang down into the long grass in front of her and rolled over onto its back, wiggling about ecstatically. Coraline scratched and tickled the soft fur on its belly, and the cat purred contentedly. When it had enough, it rolled over on its front once more and walked back toward the tennis court, like a tiny patch of midnight in the midday sun. Coraline went back to the house. Mr. Bobo was waiting for her in the driveway. He clapped on her shoulder. "The mice tell me that all is good," he said. "They say you are our savior, Coraline." Excuse me, once again, I did it again. "Our savior, Caroline." "It's Coraline, Mr. Bobo," said Coraline. "Not Caroline. Coraline." "Coraline," said Mr. Bobo, repeating her name to himself with the wonderment and respect. "Very good, Coraline. The mice say that I must tell you that as soon as they are ready to perform in public, you will come up and watch them as the first audience of all. They will play tumpity-tump and toodle-oodle, and they will dance and do 1,000 tricks. That is what they say." "I would like that very much," said Coraline. When they're ready." She knocked at Mrs. Spink's and Miss Forcible's door. Miss Spink let her in, and Coraline went into their parlor. She put her box of dolls down on the floor. Then she put her hand into her pocket and pulled out the stone with the hole in it. "Here you go," she said. "I don't need it anymore. I'm very grateful. I think it may have saved my life and saved some other people's death." She gave them both tight hugs. Really? These two weird old ladies, she's giving them hugs. Okay. Although her arms barely stretched around Miss Spink and Miss Forcible smelled like raw garlic she had been cutting, then Coraline picked up her box of dolls and went out. "What an extraordinary child," said Miss Spink. "No one had hugged her like that since she had retired from the theater." That night, Coraline lay in bed, all bathed, teeth cleaned, with her eyes open, staring up at the ceiling. It was warm enough that now that the hand was gone, she had opened her bedroom window wide. She had insisted to her father that the curtains not be entirely closed. Her new school clothes were laid out carefully on her chair for her to put on when she woke. Normally, on the night before the first day of school, Coraline was apprehensive and nervous. But she realized that there was nothing left about school that could scare her anymore. She fancied she could hear sweet music on the night air. The kind of music that can only be played on the tiniest silver trombones and trumpets and bassoons, on piccolos and tubas so delicate and small that their keys could only be pressed by the tiny pink fingers of white mice. Coraline imagined that she was back again in her dream, with the two girls and the boy under the oak tree in the meadow, and she smiled. As the first stars came out, Coraline finally allowed herself to drift into sleep, while the gentle upstairs music of the mouse circus spilled out onto the warm evening air, telling the world that the summer was almost done. I guess the mice were actually playing. And that's Coraline, everybody. That's it. We finished it. Got a nice little happy ending, don't you think? Like, she thinks she's escaped, but then the hand just kind of follows her around trying to get the key, trying to come back, but Coraline outsmarts it, and I guess she's ready to go back to school now. So, almost out of breath, but that was a really, really, really good story. So I'm going to try to do at least one of these per week. Pick a chapter book and let's see how far we can get through it. So I want to thank you guys for watching this. Like I said, hopefully you guys have watched this entire thing. There's a couple questions I'm going to put off to the side, just to get your thoughts, opinion, point of view, just once again to continue practicing, putting in work on ESV. So I'll see you guys later. Hope to hear from you guys soon. Take it easy.